I'm here today to address an issue that is one of the most impactful topics that we can cover professionally and personally. I'm here to talk about ending violence against women and children. In the United States, every 12 seconds a woman is assaulted. Every 12 seconds. That translates down to 1 out of every 4 women you pass in your faith community, in your workplace, in your neighborhood will know family violence on an ongoing basis. We refer to domestic violence as an equal opportunity epidemic because it knows no boundaries. It happens in all neighborhoods. It happens to all ethnicities. This is, as I say, an equal opportunity epidemic. However, I will refer to she as the victim and he is the perpetrator today for a couple of reasons. One is at Genesis Women's Shelter in Dallas, Texas, where I work, where I'm the executive director, those are our clients, battered women and their children. But also in 95% of the battered population, the woman is the victim, and the severity is usually much greater when the woman is the victim. I think what I do and what you all do will be so very similar that I think just for sake of ease, I'll refer to she as the victim and he as the perpetrator. What my goal is here today is that you all be able to have a better understanding of an issue that is typically thought of being behind closed doors or a private family matter, that you all will not only have a better understanding of it, but you will be able to recognize the signs of it, that you would be able to know the symptoms, be able to address it, and be part of the solution. I think in terms of how to understand it, we have to start at the very basics and know that the horrendous statistics, when I say 1 out of every 4 of us between the ages of 14 and 20, it's 1 out of every 3. So younger women are actually at greater risk than we are of being in a violent relationship. I also want you to know that it is so rampant that the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta has a violence epidemiology unit, which tells us actually that more women will present to the emergency rooms of our area hospitals as a direct result of family violence. All of us, more than all of us who go as a result of rapes and car wrecks and muggings combined. Now, typically, I don't come into your clinic, I don't go into the emergency room and say, I'm here because he smacked me. I tell you I fell. I tell you I have migraine headaches. I tell you I cut myself while cooking and I burned myself while ironing. These, however, are merely the symptoms. The illness is the violence that is perpetrated against me in my own home. Every 12 seconds. By someone who says he loves me, by someone who told me it was my fault, by someone who tells everyone else, tells society it's none of your business. What we know is it is our business. We are, this issue cannot be left on the steps of City Hall or the police departments or even the shelters. I think as human beings, whatever walk of life, wherever we are, we have to be able to stand and say, I am scared for you. There is help and there is hope. I want to talk briefly too about why it happens. Why it happens is that it always has, and it also happens because we are in a society that eroticizes violence. But I think the number one reason why it continues to happen is that she stays. She stays. The number one question I am asked every single day is, why doesn't she just get out? Why doesn't she just leave? Why doesn't she grab her kids and go? Now, that's not the question we should be asked. We should, as a society, stand and loudly ask, why does a man beat a woman? Why would he beat the mother of his children? Why would he force her to have sex? Why would he impregnate her, rape her, and possibly continue this generational cycle of violence? That's the question we should be asking, is why does he do it? But the number one question I'm asked by clients, by juries, by neighbors, by families sometimes is, why does she stay? And usually in our minds that's because, boy, if that were me, I would get out or I would do the following things. But we don't ask that at Genesis and agencies around the country like Genesis. We know why women stay in violent relationships. We know they stay because they're afraid to go. We know they stay because there are no financial resources. We know they stay because she thinks it's her fault. I've never once heard a woman say, he hurts me because he lacks conflict resolution skills. He beat her because there was no cold beer in the icebox, or dinner was late, or he thought I was running around on him, or he had a bad day at work. Whatever the sorry excuse is, somehow I think it's my fault. She stays because she thinks she loves him, that she stays because she hopes she can change the situation. She's worried about her children. She thinks that children, that children should have two parents, which I firmly believe they should. However, children who are raised in a violent home, we need to remember that children who are raised in a violent home actually receive on-the-job training to be victims of tomorrow or to be abusers of tomorrow. The impact on children who are brought up in a violent home is incredibly detrimental. We're finding that even the witnessing child, the child who is not also battered, which many are, the child who's not also battered has the same, not only emotional issues, but also the same, there's actually a high potential of physiological damage as well. With brain development and all those kinds of things. There are many reasons why she does stay. And one of the other ones, the no place to go. The concept of what a shelter or a program like Genesis might be like. So the fear of that and the threats that he has made. If you ever leave, you will never what? You will never see your children again, or you'll be sorry if you go, whatever that veiled threat of sorry that you leave. And particularly at a time of pregnancy, it is even more difficult, the layer of not being able to work or feeling physically safe. This is a time where we, as women, hunker down and sort of, well, not sort of, we nest, and to walk away from that at that vulnerable time in our lives, those vulnerable times in our lives, is very, very, very frightening. The studies tell us that women are actually, the abuse in an abusive home, that it can actually increase during a pregnancy period. So we know that women are at high risk during this time. The number one reason is that she doesn't leave is leaving doesn't stop the violence. 75% of all women who are killed after they've left the relationship. So it's not enough for us as a society to say, why don't you just get out? Why don't you just leave this? This isn't good for you. We need to tell her, if you are leaving, how to leave, how to do it with a safety plan in place, how to have, it would be, we should all have materials that we can help her leave without the possibility of future abuse. You don't tell when you're leaving. You take certain documents with you, or a set of car keys or birth certificates. There's a systematic way of doing it. Now, certainly all of those things can be replaced, but what we know is that often that time, if someone does know the other person is leaving, that can be a high risk time. The bottom line on all of this is not a fight that got out of control. This is not a bad day at the office, an argument at the end of a bad day at the office. This is all about power and control. It is a choice to batter. It can be a choice not to batter. But there is not one thing that a victim can do to change the behavior of the abuser. The abuser must change that behavior himself. I would like to share, too, what can we say, what can we do? And I think we need to recognize the signs. I have no expectations that if you say to a patient today, why don't you pack up your cares and woes, we can, there's a better place for you, there is help and there is hope, which I hope you will say. But I have to understand that it is no more likely that she will make that snap decision right there then I'd be able to stand up and speak French. I just can't do it. There's too many obstacles from that, so that keeps me from that. So what we need to do is not have the expectations that I can fix it. What I want to do is fill patients' pockets full of information, that it's against the law, that there's help and there's hope, that it is never her fault, that there's a high danger period during the pregnancy that we want to be sure that we're dealing with. But I also want to fill her pockets full of resources, that there is a national domestic violence hotline, anonymous, no cost, that can be answered, that is answered 24 hours a day. But for a victim of violence to call 1-800-799-SAFE, 1-800-799-SAFE. That phone can be answered and that call actually passed through to a program in Hohokus, New Jersey, or San Francisco, California. So I don't want this to feel to those of you who work in crisis pregnancy centers that, what could I do, or if I take this on, it's overwhelming. It's not overwhelming. What we do is just what we can with what we have. And I think that's all anybody's asking of us, is just do what you can with what you have. Have the knowledge, have the courage to walk up and say, I'm afraid for you. I go to the doctor and I'm asked all kinds of questions like, do you smoke and do you have safe sex? And yet no one ever asks me, are you safe in your home? And yet violence against women is the leading cause of injury to women in the United States, the leading cause of injury. So we have to, as healthcare professionals, as counseling professionals, as human beings, we have to be able to say, I'm afraid for you. Are you safe in your own home? And then at that point, with the resources available, you don't have to fix it. You just have to say, you matter to me. You matter to me, and I don't care what has been said to you, what has been done to you. You are of value, and this is never your fault. You can't try harder. You can't cry less or, cook better. It's not about that. It is a choice that someone chooses to use violence in order to control someone else.